Well, thank you guys for having me. So yes, I am the county manager. I've officially been in this role since October 1st of 2018. Prior to that, I was the interim county manager from August of 2017. So I've actually been doing this role for 2.5 years now, just not officially. Before that, I worked for Alachua County. I actually came here in February of 2014 as the county attorney. So I'm actually a licensed attorney, which I did for more than 20 years in local government work. Came here to be the county attorney, and circumstances happened, and I was appointed interim county manager, which led to me being here full time. So I still am an attorney. I'm just not a practicing attorney right now. And I'll tell you a little bit more about myself in a few minutes. But you know, I'm certainly not an expert in hospitality and tourism, but hopefully what I talk to you about will translate into any management capacity, because I think management, the role you play in management goes through every profession. So a little bit about the county so you kind of know how my role goes in management. So I work for the Board of County Commissioners, which are the 5 elected officials that operate the county. I equate them to a corporate board of directors. In fact, I equate my whole job to being just like a corporation. It's a little bit different in that we're a public entity, so we don't get to do a lot of things behind closed doors like other people get to do when we have strategy and other things to talk about. But this is my board of directors, and in my role as county manager, you can equate me to the chief executive officer, the CEO, or the president of the company. And this board of directors doesn't answer to shareholders, but it answers to the citizens of the county, which are their constituents, and they're like shareholders, because people who live in the community and live in the county, they invest. They invest with their tax dollars when they pay taxes on their property. They invest when they go buy something at the store in the county and pay sales tax. They invest when they work here or put businesses here. So people who are in the community invest in a variety of ways, and they're investing in the company that is Alachua County, and that provides us our revenue to operate. As the county manager, as the chief executive officer for the county, I'm responsible for $180 million budget in taxing funds. And so taxing funds are basically what's considered ad valorem funds. That's your property taxes that's based on millage rates. The overall budget is closer to $400 million when you figure in grants, federal, state grants, when you figure in special assessment dollars, which is another form of revenue that a county can collect, when you figure in fees that we collect for different things such as building permits, hauling fees for waste collection. So it really is closer to, and also carry forward funds that we may not have spent from the prior year. It's closer to $400 million. I have more than 900 employees actually as of October 1st. I think that's a little incorrect. I think we're finally over 1,000. I think we're about 1,005 employees for the county. And as I said, I serve as the chief executive officer and the chief administrator for the county. So I said I was a lawyer. A little bit about my background as well may be helpful. I graduated from the University of South Florida. I grew up in Pinellas County, so I graduated from the University of South Florida. I went to Stetson College of Law. I started my career as an attorney in the prosecutor's office. I prosecuted domestic and violence cases, misdemeanor and felony, for almost 4 years. And then I got a job doing what I really loved in local government and became an assistant county attorney in Citrus County, where I was for 7 years, and I ended as their chief attorney, the number 2 attorney in the office, doing most of the litigation. And that's how I got started with local government law. From there, I left the county, and I did my own private practice for a few years. So I operated my own business as a sole practitioner for a few years, after which one of my corporate clients asked me to be their first general counsel. So I was the first general counsel for an electronics recycling company that was a global corporation that was headquartered in Citrus County, doing electronics waste as most of what their business was, with facilities in England, Mexico, Israel, and there were a few other facilities at the time they were in the process of shutting down. And I was their general counsel, secretary of their board, as well as the Chief Human Resources Administrator globally for the entire corporation. So I spent 3 years working in a corporate setting, a privately held, closely held corporation, advising them and acting as secretary to the board, after which this position came open for county attorney, and I guess you say the rest is history. So I've kind of seen business from being a business owner to being in corporate and being in government. So like most structures, I can't manage 1,000 employees plus employees on my own. So in my structure, I have 6 direct reports. 4 of them are assistant managers. I have a deputy manager who's my number 2 in the office. So when I'm gone, I know he can handle things. He's actually an engineer. And these are the departments that he handles. This is Jim Harriet. And then I have another assistant county manager who's over all of our money. So he's the no guy. He's over our fiscal services, management and budget, which is the office that budgets everything for us, our purchasing department, and also risk management. So Alachua County is self-insured, which means we manage our own risk. We have a $30+ million self-insurance fund. Some of the other elected officials, like the sheriff and the property appraiser, tax collector, clerk of court, supervisor of elections, are part of our risk pool. We operate our own health insurance risk pool, and then some of our liability also is in that risk pool. And so this assistant manager is in charge of making sure that our risk manager and our risks is managed. This is my 3rd assistant county manager, who's in charge of public safety and community services. Community support services is all of our social services. And then court services is our probation, pretrial services that we operate. We also operate a work release facility, which is where people are sentenced, but they're allowed to leave to go to work for the day. We manage for the courts a lot of your diversionary programs, as well as programs such as drug court, veterans court. We help with all of those courts as well. It's actually one of our biggest departments. Court services is about 88 people in that department. And of course, fire rescue is one of our largest departments with about 250 people. And we operate ambulance service county-wide, and then we operate fire services in the unincorporated county. There are 9 municipalities in Alachua County. The largest, of course, is the city of Gainesville. So from a population perspective, unincorporated Alachua County is 45% of the 260,000 population. Gainesville is another 45%, and the other 8 municipalities make up 10% of the rest of the county. The largest of those today is, I believe it's the city of Alachua. We were just having this conversation. The city of Alachua, which is around 10,000, and that's the next largest to the city of Gainesville. And then lastly, I have my assistant county manager, Gina Peebles, who also acts as my chief of staff and keeps me managed myself, because there's a lot of things that are going on. And as you can imagine, if I leave my email for about 2 hours, I probably have about 80 emails in that couple of hours. So I have both an executive assistant and Ms. Peebles, who acts as my chief of staff, to try to keep things straight. I get, as you can imagine, a lot of requests to go cut ribbons, wave hi, greet people, come to class. Yeah. So, you know, I can't attend everything, obviously. I try to attend what I can, but I also have to maintain my job as the CEO of the county. I can't have everybody, my managers don't do everything. And these are the departments that she's over. And then this is another one of my direct reports, Communication and Legislative Affairs. This is essentially our PIO, our Public Information Officer, who's in charge of all our communications, and currently is also our legislative liaison, because as you can imagine, we spend a lot of time in Tallahassee and in DC. There are a lot of issues from a legal perspective that affect counties substantially, particularly at the state level, not unlike corporations who you find will have lobbyists who make sure that their business interests are protected. It's important for us that our interests are protected, because For counties, it's all about keeping local local. We want to be able to decide our own values and morals for our community and allow the public to do that. And sometimes our elected officials at higher levels have other ideas. So this is the county's mission statement. Responsive and responsible are really the two key words. So our mission is to provide responsive service to citizens and responsible stewardship of county resources for current and future generations. And this is a list of the values that the county has. Accountability, diversity, innovation, respect, communication, honesty, and integrity. So accountability. We measure supervisor, individual, and team performance. We make transparent decisions. Transparency is a big thing with government. We don't do a lot, like I said, in private or behind closed doors. There's very few exceptions to that. We recognize excellence with our staff, and we give feedback at all levels to help us improve. I'm a very big proponent that even though I'm in this position, that does not mean I know everything, and I will come to work, and every day there's something I can learn. I can either become more efficient at my job, more effective at my job, learn something about the county that I didn't know before. I learn something every day, no matter how long I do this. So diversity, obviously we thrive when we celebrate diversity in our community and employee population, and we have a very big commitment at the county to equity and inclusion and equal access to all. Innovation, we do not value statements such as, I shouldn't probably use the word we do not value, but statements such as we've always done it this way are not acceptable. It is important that, and that's not to say that we've always done it this way is not the wrong way, but you've got to be willing to look at whether or not that way is the most effective and efficient way. And sometimes that's very hard, particularly when you're looking at staff. Change is difficult for people, particularly people who've been doing it a certain way for a long time. And I think the most important point when you look at innovation and people say, well, I've been doing it this way for 10 years, what's wrong with this? Well, you know, maybe nothing's wrong with it, but let's take a look at it. You haven't looked at it in a while, and maybe there is a more effective and efficient way to do it. And if not, great, we'll continue doing it this way. But you don't know if you're not going to go out and look for that. Respect. So respect is particularly important, not just respect for our customers, who are our constituents and the citizens of the county, but for staff. Obviously, in a large organization such as this, we have many departments, and departments can't operate in silos. We're all a team. I think it's really, really important for people to understand, you know, you'll have people say, well, I'm the fire chief, I don't care what budget thinks. Well, that's not the right attitude for a team atmosphere, because the fire chief should care just as much about the budget as the budget director, but the budget director should care just as much about the operation of fire rescue, and that it is operating at its optimum level as he does the budget. So everybody should have a buy-in for everybody else. And that's part of that respect. And of course, communication is a very big key. Active listening skills are important, paying close attention to what others are saying. A lot of times, staff, they really just want to be heard. And to be very clarifying, make sure you're getting your point across. Those things are all very important. And it really kind of flows through everything, and every value that we do is communication and effective communication. Honesty, obviously, that's kind of self-explanatory, but it demonstrates transparency and a willingness to tell others the truth when necessary. And then, of course, integrity demonstrates a respect for and follows organizational policies and procedures. Now, earlier this year, when earlier when I started down this path as interim, I came up with something that we all refer to now as the 5 C's. So to me, these are the things that, taking the mission and the values that I have focused on for staff and that we are working to further develop. In fact, right now, we're working on developing an award program for our employees that is entitled I Am Alachua County. And it's based on the county's mission, a strong demonstration of the county values that I've showed you, or my 5 C's. And so I'm going to go through those 5 C's and talk about them a little bit. We try to we do a quarterly newsletter for our county employees, and we try to provide something based on one of the 5 C's during that. So the 5 C's that we have are collaboration, competence, consideration, creativity, and culture. Now what you don't see is communication. I talked about communication being important, and that communication's the C, but communication actually is the thread that runs through all of these, because if you don't have communication in any one of these, they're not going to work. So, let me pull them up. So, collaboration. Collaboration is between departments, between divisions. It's among them. It's among their staff. It goes horizontally. It goes vertically. It is important to support each other as a team. So I talked about the budget director should care about the fire chief, and the fire chief should care about the budget director. Well, a lot of stuff that we do as the county crosses many departments. So budget is usually always part of the equation, right? Something that is a building may intersect with our environmental protection department, our growth management department, which is building, with budget, because we need money to do the project, and public works is our capital projects management team. So you may have 4 people involved, and if everybody's talking past each other, is not listening to each other, and is not collaborating, then you have several groups of people working on the same thing that are not communicating, and you don't get you either get a product that's disjointed, or you don't get your top product. So collaboration is very important. We know that disagreements are going to happen. Disagreements, I believe, are healthy. I don't want yes people. I don't need yes people. I need people who are going to give me advice. I need people who are going to tell me if I'm going to step off a cliff. I need people who know more about things than I do. Because in a county that operates with that many employees and that many departments doing that many jobs, I certainly can't know the ins and outs of all of them. So there's going to be disagreements at the table, but I think what's critical about that is that when you step out as one voice, because if you don't, you can appear to be incompetent. You can appear that you don't, that basically you're not as a team. You don't speak as one. So you've got this person telling, you know, your higher levels up this, and you've got this person telling them that, and so where do you go with that? So disagreements are healthy, but they should be done at the table and not openly once you walk out of the room. Employees of the Board of County Commissioners who are both appointed and who are the only employees that the Board of County Commissioners can fire. That is myself and the county attorney. They have 2 employees. Everybody else either falls under the county attorney, she has 10, or myself with 1,000 plus. And any given time they come to a legal meeting of them, any 3 of them can fire me on any day the board meets. So it is communication is a very key factor in all of these for me as well. But one of the things we talk about with collaboration and support is that ultimately somebody is going to have to be the responsible person. And that's where we get to competence. So as an organization, accountability is key. It's very important when you are with your staff to have accountability. Accountability serves a lot of roles. It's not just to tell somebody, hey, you're doing wrong, or hey, you know, you need to fix this, because employees need expectations. They need expectations that they can understand. They want to know what they're supposed to be doing and that they're doing it right. And they have to, so it's hard to say you're not doing that right if you haven't been clear in how you're communicating to them. But accountability and competence is very, very important because, like I said, you can have disagreements at the table, but somebody has to make the decision. I tell my lower level staff, when your supervisor makes a decision, you may not agree with it, but that decision is that of your supervisor. If it's not illegal, unethical, immoral, then you should be supporting that decision. If you've been heard, you've been able to have your say, and the supervisor makes a different decision than you would, you support that decision, because if that supervisor's wrong, the department director will be holding that supervisor accountable. By the same token, the department director makes a decision, it's the wrong decision, the assistant manager is going to hold that department director accountable. And it goes up the line, because if the assistant manager makes the wrong choice, then I'm going to hold the assistant manager accountable. And if I've made the wrong choice, guess what? I'm the one who's going to be accountable. And when, from at least from my perspective, at talking to my board of directors, the buck stops with me, even if it's the 1,000th employee who is mowing the lawn on the right-of-way 20 miles from my downtown office. Okay? And if they do the wrong thing and mow down a bunch of wildflowers and upset everybody, it's still my responsibility. And when the citizen comes to the microphone and complains to the board, it's my responsibility to say, yes, board, I will take, that is my responsibility, and I will ensure that that issue is corrected in the future. As I tell my staff, when you come to me with a decision and I accept that decision, it becomes my decision. So it's my responsibility to support that decision as well. If you come to me and I disagree with your decision and I make my own decision, it's still my responsibility to support that decision and whatever happens with that decision. So consideration, obviously consideration of each other as colleagues is first and foremost, but it goes beyond that. We often spend more waking hours with the people we work with than we do our own families and at home, particularly if you are in a profession where you are at upper level management. You spend more time with your work family than you do your home family, your waking hours anyway. So consideration of each other is very, very important, but consideration of the public has also got to be forefront. I know you hear things like, the customer's always right. It's not about being right as much as it is about how they're treated, whether they're right or wrong. Everybody needs to be treated the same. And, when you're talking about government, we do things we regulate people, we issue citations to people, we tell people they've broken the law, or we tell them, yes, you can build that house you want, or no, that doesn't meet requirements and I'm sorry, you can't do that. So, but there are ways to communicate, again it goes back to communication, that foster consideration of others. Customer service is one of our top priorities. Obviously, as a citizen of the county who pays taxes in any form, you all pay our salaries. And it's very important that we have that consideration. Creativity. Building a creative workplace is a way to build a sense of belonging, that individuals and work teams are able to openly share ideas and make a difference. So it's really important, again, this goes back to having disagreements at the table. You want to be able to accept ideas. It goes back to listening and hear those ideas, be open to those ideas. We want creativity. And it goes back to, we've always done it this way. Being creative is important. It's being willing to think outside the box, not settle for status quo. I think you get a more effective and efficient product when everybody is allowed to be themselves and put out those ideas. Culture is a tough one, especially when you're stepping into an existing organization. The culture has already been set. And where you have a culture that maybe hasn't had collaboration or hasn't had, accountability and competency, culture becomes more difficult. Again, like I said earlier, change becomes difficult for people. So culture is basically the character and personality of an organization, and it's exhibited by the values, our interactions, behaviors, and attitude. But the bottom line is that our reputation in the public and among our current employees and our prospective employees is based on our culture. So we work very hard to, again, go back to, a team atmosphere, a culture where people thoroughly enjoy coming to work. It may be a stressful day, and I can tell you that I thoroughly enjoy going to work. I may not know if I'm going to get fired on a Tuesday board meeting day, but I enjoy coming to work, and I do my job as hard as I do, whether it's a stressful day, a not stressful day, because I enjoy what I do. And my goal is that all of our employees are going to enjoy what they do on a given day, enjoy wanting to come to work, even if it isn't necessarily the best day or it's a stressful day. Culture is really important because it's either going to strengthen your organization or it's going to undermine your organization. If you have a culture where everybody is off in their own silos and the budget director doesn't care about the fire chief and vice versa, then that's going to undermine your organization. If you have a culture where you argue at the table and then you walk out of the door and you've got two people saying two different things and not on the same page, it's going to undermine your organization because you're going to have people that are doing different things towards the same goal and maybe not reaching it together. So those are basically my 5 C's that we have been working to integrate into all of county government and reward people for showing or demonstrating that. And when we go back to things, when something happens, we'll ask, which one of the 5 C's was this that we missed, that your staff missed, and where's there opportunity to improve on those. So with that, that's really kind of my philosophy on how I manage. I guess a couple other points because that's before we go to questions. So I think it's really important that you don't manage, my philosophy is you don't manage from the top down. It's not me sitting in my throne somewhere saying, you'll do this and you'll tell your staff this and they'll tell their staff this, like a game of telephone. You really need to manage from the bottom up. I try to set aside time. Sometimes it's very, very hard. I'd like to do it once a week. I don't always get to do it once a week, but to show up. We have remote sites. We have 13 fire stations. I've got a public works compound. We've got buildings all over the place. To try to show up and walk in and make sure they see my face. Hi, how you doing? Just tell me how things are going. Everybody knows I'm very open to talk to, and listen to what even your bottom line, lower line staff have to say. Currently, we're working on a project. Unfortunately, we can't get to all 1,000 employees. It would take us the next few years, but we have not looked at our strategic goals and policies in a long time. The board has not. But rather than taking them to the board and say, board, what do you want them to be? I want to bring them from the bottom. So we're creating work groups that'll be representative of different departments. And we're going to have them go to their staff and say, what do you think our strategic goals and policies should be? What's important to you? And we're going to build that from the bottom up. And then we're going to go to the Board of County Commissioners in a strategic planning session, and we're going to recommend new goals and policies for the board that have come from their own staff. The staff that are out there working every day, the staff that understand what the issues and concerns of the public are, what the issues and concerns of their jobs are, and build it that way. Because I really think it's important to lead from the bottom up instead of from the top down. You've got to work with everyone. So that's my philosophy. But I am open to any questions that you may have. Yes, ma'am.
So out of the 5 C's, is there one that you think is the most important?
I think they're all very important, but I would say that culture, of course, like I said, communication flows through all of them, but culture really is critical because it can undermine, a poor culture can very much undermine your organization. If employees don't like being there because it's a miserable place to work, you're not going to keep quality people. You're going to have a hard time getting quality people. They're not going to work together. It's almost like dominoes. I think you have to have a positive culture that fosters things like innovation, collaboration, etc. Yes?
Have you seen a lot of crossover with your background in law in your current job?
Absolutely. So I think that, law informs policy. You're obviously not going to have, so the county attorney, her realm is law and giving advice on the law. My realm is policy and implementing policy that is approved by the board. That's my job, is to implement the board's policy. But law always informs policy, because obviously you can't have policy that is contrary to law. And, we joke around with, so for those of you who are familiar with the legal side of things, we talk about legal precedents. But we talk, in my world, we talk about political precedent, right, and legal policy, which is code for things like sometimes the board's going to do something which may not be exactly legal, but we're going to find the most legal way to do something because they feel a moral obligation to do it. And when we say that, it's not exactly legal. I'm not saying they're going to go to jail. We're talking about something that if they get sued, they may have to pay, but morally they feel that they need to do it, so they're willing to take the risk that somebody may sue them and their decision may get overturned. But they feel it's so important that they do it. So we talk about things like, it's legal policy, but then it's political precedent. So it may be legal to do something, but if you do it, you're going to have a line at the podium every week of people asking you to do the same thing, and do you really want to go down that road? So I think they're very much intertwined.
You should go to one of the county meetings.
Oh, no. Yeah.
They are on TV.
They are on TV. They're live streamed on Facebook. They're on Channel 12. If you have, yeah, they're on Channel 12 on just about every Tuesday. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious because I know that people probably, with everything that you're managing, people are angry, and like you said, with the county meetings, they're voicing their concerns and everything, going to your point of making sure that everyone is being treated the same. What is kind of your philosophy on making sure all the way down people are having their concerns heard and kind of treating them the same?
Well, it's about making sure to respond in a timely manner. I think that's mostly what people want. They want to know they're heard. And if their email or their phone call goes unanswered for 3 days, 4 days, that's when they start emailing the commissioners, or they show up at a board meeting and say, I've left 5 messages and nobody's called me back. So it's being responsive. And I'll tell you, it's hard. It's not just hard for somebody in my position. It's hard for even our department directors who have so much responsibility to get back right away, and things do get lost. But when they do get lost, that you basically say, I'm sorry, it got lost in my email. Let me get to that right away, going back to the consideration and customer service. But I think it's making sure to respond. You may not have an answer right away, but if you can at least say, I've got it, I'm working on it, and if you tell them you're going to get back to them, you do that in the time frame you say. Yes, ma'am.
I guess my question is, how did you enjoy your time in law school?
In law school? It's definitely a difficult task, very challenging. I tell people that the first year was extremely difficult. The second and third years got easier, not because the work did, but because you start to think like a lawyer. It's a mindset, and they teach you to think in a certain strategic way. And so I think that it gets easier as you go through, because you learn to think that way.
I went to Stetson University for undergrad.
Yes, in DeLand. Yes, sir. Did you have one?
This is kind of more of a personal question, but since you're in such a big position, making so many big decisions, how did you kind of deal with the nerves going into that? Did they kind of dip out over time, or still feel a little bit?
So, I will tell you that when I was appointed interim, so as I said, there are 2 employees of the board, and the only 2 that they have control over and that they can fire on any given time that they meet as a board. One day in August in 2017, we came to a board meeting and somebody made a motion to fire the county manager, as I sat there as the county attorney, and it passed 4-1. They had to have somebody as county manager, and I was proceeding to tell them that they needed to select an interim because there was nobody to sign documents and contracts and all those things that the county manager has to do. And before I could finish my sentence, they said, "How about you do that?" So as now the only employee of the Board of County Commissioners, it was, sure, if that's what you would like me to do. So for the first year, the first few months, I was actually the county attorney and the county manager until we got them to appoint my deputy county attorney as interim county attorney. But at first, I will tell you, I was a deer in the headlights. And, I had to rely on my assistant managers. And luckily, I have 4 very great assistant managers. And I think that is very important to say because there's a lot of people who manage out there who feel threatened by people who know more than they do or who are high achievers because they're not confident in their own selves. And that's not a way to manage. You really need to have people that surround you that know as much or more than you do because especially when you're in a role like mine, as I said before, you can't know everything. So it was really until I found my way for the first few months, it was really knowing that I could rely on them and listening to what they were telling me and taking their advice on you should do this next or you need to do this until I found my way and could really put forth my own ideas and be a contributing member to that. It was really just kind of steering a ship until I felt comfortable with that. Do I still feel uncomfortable at times? Absolutely. The position I'm in is a very political position, and sometimes we're out there making recommendations that may not be popular, and sometimes we're out there making recommendations that we're passionate about. So, sometimes the nerves and those things, they're always still there, but, you're as professional as possible when you have to do that. So, sometimes it's when you're speaking in front of a whole class.
How do you go around implementing your strategies when they don't necessarily align with what the constituents want or what with elected officials, with what their point of views are, being that they're elected directly by?
So my job, as I said before, is to implement policy. So as far as the views of the commissioners, I hope that my goals and values and what I'm doing does align with them. And when I say aligns with the board, it may not align with Commissioner 1 or 2, but the board, whether the board speaks, whether it's 3-2, 4-1, or 5-0. So if it may be 3-2, but that's the policy that I'm going to implement. And so, I think with the board, integrity is very important. And what I mean by that is I don't ever go into one board member and tell them something different than the next board member because I know that that's their position and what they want to hear. I go in and say, okay, I know what your position is on this, and let's agree to disagree because that's not going to be my recommendation. And I think that's respected among them because they know I'm not going to go in and just tell them what they want to hear. I'm going to tell them what I believe my professional opinion is. When it comes to the public, that's hard because they are your customers, but sometimes they just can't have everything that they would like to have. And, you have to address that delicately. It's about letting them understand why that may be, but it's not just saying no and saying that's why this is. It's also about saying, but let me see if there's another way we can accomplish this. Maybe there's not, but you should at least look at that and see whether there's another way to get to what they're trying to accomplish.
So just a comment, the county does still have the tourism board.
Yes.
And you have a representative. Can you explain a little bit?
So The county has, we have a Visitor and Convention Bureau, which is the Visit Gainesville, Alachua County. It's not Visit Alachua because we have a city of Alachua. It's not Visit Gainesville because that doesn't encompass the entire community. It's not Visit Alachua County because everybody says, where's Alachua County? So it's Visit Gainesville, Alachua County. And that department manages the tourist development tax. So are all you familiar with the tourist development tax? That's what they call the bed tax. That's your heads and beds money. It's what the Board of County Commissioners adopts. There's currently, we get 5 pennies on every dollar of hotel night stay that goes into a fund. It currently collects a little over $5 million a year from all the hotel night visits, and we manage those dollars. Tourism is funded, our tourism department is funded through that. We also have what's called a tourist development council that makes recommendations on the money. There are hoteliers, there are certain positions on that board. State law requires us to, if we're going to collect tourist development tax, we're required to have a tourism development committee, a tourist committee to manage or to make recommendations on that. Ultimately, the board does. One of the big projects, for those of you who have been following, that we're talking about using our pledging capacity, our bond pledge with the tourist tax, it'll be 3 pennies but pay with 2, is the new sports arena to be at Celebration Point, which is intended to be about 130,000 square foot NCAA compliant sports arena. And when I say NCAA compliant is because the NCAA requires a minimum number of seats, which then translates into how big it has to be. So we're talking about a 5,000 seat sports venue at Celebration Point. That we have been given the go-ahead to negotiate with the Celebration Point Community Development District, which is another government entity. If you've ever been there and you've noticed that extra penny of sales tax on your bill, that is because they are a community development district, which is a legally recognized government entity that gets to impose sales tax. So they have bonding capacity as well as the county does to generate revenue through sales tax. So we are looking to partner with them to bring the sports venue here to the county. So sports, trade shows, maybe some smaller concerts could go there. And that's been a major focus of the Tourism Council and for our tourism dollars now, because obviously the benefit to the tourism money is huge. It has a lot of economic impact, not just in hotel nights, but incidental economic benefit because people will start spending at restaurants and retail, staying at the hotels more. It's all walkable in that area. So it has huge implications for revenue for the county.